They also went through and updated a couple of World of Warcraft quests. This was Bros Before Ho Ho Ho's has now been renamed Holiday Bromance, and a achievement called My Sack is Gigantique has been renamed My Storage is Gigantique.
I'm just going to give you a quick attaboy for getting through that without laughing. Greetings and welcome back. This is Nexus Gaming News for Thursday, September 16th. I'm Garrett Weinzierl here as always with Kyle Ferguson. Now, there has been a major development in the ongoing story of the discrimination lawsuit against Activision Blizzard. But before we get to that, which is going to be today's main story, here are the Activision Blizzard developments that have happened since the last time we talked about the lawsuit, which previously we were covering on our Heroes of the Storm podcast, Into the Nexus, if you want to go back and find that. But before we get to today's main story, here are the Activision Blizzard developments that have happened since the last time we talked about the lawsuit, which before NGN started, we were covering on our Heroes of the Storm podcast, Into the Nexus, if you want to go hear our previous coverage. But Kyle, what have we missed?
So perhaps the biggest overall news is going to be that a Better ABK Twitter account continues to update everybody that they have not had their 4 demands acknowledged. These have been from the beginning of the walkout, and still daily they make sure we're aware that no leadership has addressed this.
Yeah, this has been a pretty big sticking point for me as well, because some folks are like, why are we still covering this? And I'm just like, well, it's easy. Leadership haven't actually addressed what the employees have asked for. So all the people they fired, that wasn't on the employee demands. But other things that have happened is that the Overwatch development team announced that they will be renaming McCree as the character was named for the Blizzard employee of the same name, and that employee was linked to the now infamous Cosby suite.
They also went through and updated a couple of World of Warcraft quests, such as two for the holiday event. This was Bros Before Ho Ho Ho's has now been renamed Holiday Bromance, and a achievement called My Sack is Gigantique has been renamed My Storage is Gigantique.
I'm just going to give you a quick attaboy for getting through that without laughing.
I do need to pause on this bit of news because I'm not sure how to take this sort of thing. Is this the higher-ups distracting us? Is this a direct order? We need to clean up the game? Or are things like McCree being renamed here, and the My Sack is Gigantique joke what the teams are able to do? Is this the changes that they're pushing for, and these are the ones they can actually get through?
I can't speak to every single example, but I do know with McCree, the Overwatch team did speak up saying this is something we want and this is something we can do. I would imagine the same is true of renaming achievements and whatnot in World of Warcraft, but that I can't speak to with a source, basically. But yeah, it's like this is the kind of thing where I always thought these were funny, but I also I can understand it. I can understand wanting to remove some of these. I literally have a World of Warcraft shirt I still wear that says "How big is your sack?" and then it's got all of the icons of the freaking OG vanilla bag icons on there.
It's a disconnect, and I totally see wanting to modernize your MMO. Yeah.
To me, it's like, yeah, this is all well and fine, but again, can leadership maybe say anything about the actual demands by the employees? That would be nice.
Which is why I don't believe this is the leadership villainously twisting their hands saying, well, we'll change an achievement, but we're not going to acknowledge you. They probably are too involved in their own investigation on their own people. In particular, as we get to our serious news of today, they are quite busy silencing their own people. But there's one more bit of news here that has happened. This is Julie Hodges has replaced Claudine Naughton as Activision Blizzard's new HR chief.
Yeah, and this is a new development. If you remember hearing that an HR exec departed Blizzard, that was actually Jesse Meschuk, who left back in August. I believe the same day as J. Allen Brack is when that news dropped. But yeah, now Claudine Naughton is out. Julie Hodges, coming in from the Walt Disney Company, will be replacing her. And it's also been noted by some folks reading through extremely dry legal documentation on Twitter that it looks like Claudine Naughton is being let go with a $650,000 severance and over $4 million worth of stock buyout. So some folks aren't super stoked about that.
No, people at this time do not want to see golden parachutes being engaged for those that may have been a part of this. However, a PR representative has said that Claudine Naughton was not let go for the reasons of the legal proceedings in California, and it was for other reasons entirely. But of course, the PR department has said a lot of things since this whole business began. The other problem, of course, is that people just don't particularly think that Disney should be touted as a opportunity here for the company. Disney, operating particularly in California, has had a lot of wage troubles and a lot of worker troubles.
Yeah, there's certainly not. I don't know. You and I have talked a lot about how this extends to the greater industry as a whole. And I think this is just yet another example of that. Because it's, well, you don't think of the Walt Disney Company as a video game company. It's all creative media at the end of the day. It is large creative teams making products. So, yeah, I wouldn't celebrate it as too much of a win. And again, none of the employees were calling for the firing of HR representatives, which, by the way, official statements from Activision Blizzard is that none of these people were fired, that they left of their own accord, which is suspect as hell.
Exactly. And Disney's relationship with where the income resides and who makes the money very much mirrors what people feel Activision Blizzard looks like right now. It'd be a little different if we were bringing in more of a small company minded person in order to get the workers on board. Instead, we're just continuing the systems.
Yeah. And then also today, we're going to talk a little bit more about this at the end because we both find this kind of hilarious. But today, we're recording this on September 16th. WoW had found updated art in the 9.1.5 PTR build of World of Warcraft. If you're unfamiliar with WoW, the PTR is the public test realm. This is where they test patches before they go live. A new build went live, and WoW had found updates to old in-game art from vanilla depicting scantily clad women. They're now being changed to be either less sexualized depictions of women or straight up replacing old art with like a bowl of fruit as a still life painting. Again, we'll dive back into that when we get through the big story of this week, which is the fact that the U.S. National Labor Relations Board, also known as the NLRB, if you like horrible initialisms that are not easy to say quickly, they've filed a federal labor board complaint against Activision Blizzard. Josh Idelson at Bloomberg pointed out that a copy of the NLRB complaint points out that Activision Blizzard, quote, has threatened employees that they cannot talk about or communicate about wages, hours, and working conditions, which is why the NLRB is putting forward this formal complaint. So the NLRB is being referenced as a unionization body.
There's a number of things going on here. So the video game developers for a while have been trying to unionize, and they want to mirror the systems of the Screen Actors Guild. Now, if they're not able to do that, they're looking for perhaps a craftsman's version of a union. Either way, if you've known, it's kind of weird that on the cover of a video game box, you don't have developer names, you don't have voice actor names. It is very much the company that produced this entire product, which is frankly bizarre with how many people it takes to make a video game, particularly when directors, as we've seen in the past, are really starting to matter. We are seeing visionary people propel video games into new heights, but they are supported by huge amounts of people, just like what happens in movies. A bad movie, it can still be an amazing success for costumers and set designers and the people who did the video or the graphics in the background. All that is being hidden right now. So without even, addressing the ongoing situation at Blizzard, artists are hoping to get representation and a place at the table to discuss these wages and inequalities that they see.
Yeah. It's interesting you mentioned that, because we're plugged in, and like when we cover specific games, like our Heroes of the Storm podcast, we're hearing from developers all the time, and so I don't know. I've always looked at like the lack of names on the front of game boxes. And what is even a game box anymore? I just download my games anyway. But I've always looked at that as like, I think at least the teams themselves, the development teams and the teams of artists making games, like for the most part, they always seem to have a good understanding and be happy to talk about the fact that it's a massive, massive team effort. Like whenever there's been quote unquote Rockstar developers, at least in the games that you and I have covered together, a lot of times they deflect and are like, hey, I'm glad you're really stoked about my job, but there's so many people that you don't see that, aren't cleared to talk on like a subreddit openly on Twitter. I've always kind of looked at it like that. But getting back to this, getting the NLRB involved, it just seems like yet another escalation. And this complaint, it looks like this complaint was formally filed just 6 days ago on September 10th, and it wasn't until the 14th that Bloomberg and other outlets started reporting on it.
It is general because this is an investigation, and they're hoping for the federal government now to become involved. This is the National Labor Relations Board. So to read a little bit of this out to y'all, the above named employer has engaged in and is engaging in unfair labor practices within the means of the Section 8A1. Now, these are now generalized as surveillance, interrogation, including polling, coercive statements, threats, promises of benefits, and coercive rules. All we can do is read into these things. However, clearly, surveillance, not a good idea, not a great thing. This is likely a taking from company Slacks and other sort of internal messages and then copying those out, holding on to those statements, and then using them against them during a performance review or a sit-down meeting of some kind. And interrogation here, including polling, suggests that they are warping the information that they're getting from their employees in such a way to make them look bad or to push them in certain directions. That's certainly the threats and promise of benefits. If you do not talk about these things, you have a chance to be promoted. And if you continue to talk about these things, such as the wages of your individual workers around you, or try to communicate your wishes, like those expressed by a better ABK, you will be held back.
Yeah, and we've seen some of that public discussion of wages back now a couple of years when it was unveiled that there was like a Google spreadsheet that certain Blizzard employees were opting into entering their salary information. I want to say this was over a year ago, might have been 2. And that was long before any of this business with the lawsuit. But it sure seems that the lawsuit has caused a bit of a crackdown. Almost like there's, I don't know, Kyle, a law firm that's known for union busting that's been hired by Activision Blizzard to oversee these things.
Right. And that is, of course, the crux of the complaints not being addressed still, is that Wilmer Hale is still part of this anti-union efforts. And a better ABK said, protecting concerned activity refers to employees discussing ways to improve their workplace or organizing into labor groups. So when we see plain statements in these documents that say, oh, Blizzard and Activision is trying to protect concerned activity, they are straight up stopping their workers from having discussions about benefiting and improving their workplace. Which
doesn't surprise me in the least. Again, it's like action has been taken, but none of it is action that has been requested by the affected party of the discrimination lawsuit, which is the employees themselves. They're the ones that drew up those 4 specific requests. They're the ones running the A Better ABK Twitter account, which is kind of us, the public's view inside to see kind of how the whole thing is going, on top of also some key employees that are happy to continue talking openly about this on social media. So like, I don't know, none of it surprises me, because again, it feels like a lot of these quote unquote not firings that are, you're letting go of old guard, bringing in outside hires. It really does feel performative.
And that sort of fear that they're putting in place. I mean, the idea of threatened or disciplined employees on account of protected concerned activity is insane. It reminds me very much of what you were hoping to get out of for your life after you're done with middle school. But here you are, an adult working in an unfair situation, creating video games, and you have to be concerned about what you say in a company Slack and the like. It's very distressing. The interesting thing about this all is that it could be retroactive, and that A Better ABK submitted this and had this put forward to the federal level because, and their quote, the National Labor Relations Board under the Biden administration has made it clear that they will hold companies accountable whenever they break the law. We have filed these changes to ensure that the actions of ABK management will not go unanswered. And they go on to say on their Twitter, in partnership with Code CWA, we have filed an unfair labor practice suit with the National Labor Relations Board. If the NLRB rules in our favor, the ruling will be retroactive, and we will see a precedent that no worker in the U.S. can be intimidated out of talking about forced arbitration. And that's something we brought up when we originally covered this, but forced arbitration is a crazy thing.
Yeah, and it's one, it is mentioned specifically, again, in those 4 specific demands that we keep referring to that have come from the Activision Blizzard employees themselves. Forced arbitration is basically when a company requires an employee to submit any dispute to them.
You must go talk to your bully to get help with your bully.
Yeah.
And by becoming an employee of this company that has forced arbitration, you agree to it. And then that's the end.
And that is why I am not at all surprised to see a continued focus on this, even in light of so many of the higher ups within the human resources department within Blizzard leaving and being replaced, because it doesn't really matter. Like a new boss, same as the old boss, kind of a concern here. I think this is yet another kind of a beginning of a story and not so much at the end to anything. Looking over these documents, we couldn't find anything that was like a specific example of the behavior by Activision Blizzard, in terms of like what were they doing to pressure employees or to punish employees. It is not specified. So this is something I'm going to be keeping an eye on, because I want to know, like, are we going to get public knowledge of exactly what caused this complaint to be drawn up in the first place?
It's an ongoing investigation, and we are still picking up the pieces. But the news you might see today around is all about fruit.
Well, fruit and cleavage, apparently. To completely shift gears to something I would describe as absurd. Yeah, let's talk about that art replacement that's going on in World of Warcraft, because it's pretty ridiculous. So as previously mentioned, Wowhead was the first place I saw a report on this. They found that a new test build of World of Warcraft on the test servers, that's some really old vanilla World of Warcraft art. And when I say art, I mean this is literally art. This is an in-game asset that is framed artwork that hangs on walls in like really, really old World of Warcraft dungeons. They were super low resolution paintings, because these are things that were done before 2004.
Right.
Like this is digital art from pre 2004. And so they are getting updated, and the new art is more high fidelity for sure. So you could chalk it up to they just want to make it look nicer, but they are also clearly changing or you could use the word censoring the art. Because essentially there's two pieces that are shown as examples, and both include women in the in-game artwork with cleavage, essentially, is the best way I can describe it without getting ridiculous.
Well, yes, the quality of which particular the laying down rogue, perhaps, is being exposed is insane. The new art upgrade is an upgrade in the fact that we have pixels to share now. This is this is an art upgrade in the fact that you will now have higher quality assets inside your game. And again, I have to think that this is the teams doing what they can to make the game the way they want to see it. This is not against some higher up order where they say, ignore their requests, but replace those boobies.
Yeah, exactly. And so this is as someone who really likes Hearthstone, we've already seen this. And hey, there it is. Speaking of which, in Hearthstone, where they took an old illustration of the character Jaina Proudmoore and covered up the cleavage with a little added bit of armor, essentially. That was it. I believe this is an old Glenn Rain piece. If you're a Blizzard illustrator nerd, Glenn Rain no longer with the company. Went to one of those new companies that was founded during kind of this mass Blizzard exodus before the lawsuit. But yeah, this is the kind of thing I just find it so silly. And I have a great big personal bias here, Kyle, because when we first started talking about the lawsuit, I got multiple messages from folks who are like, but wait, what about OnlyFans? But wait, what about hot tub streamers? Like, are we supposed to respect women, or are we supposed to ogle them? And it frustrates me to no end that it like needs to be explained that like there's intent. Intent is important. Like, no one is saying inherently sexual content is bad. If you use that as an excuse to be a horrible person to women, that's bad. And that's something that has just lived in my mind. I don't get it. I don't know. Maybe it's because like I went to art school, spent a lot of time drawing naked people. It was a big part of my upbringing. But I just don't get it. And so this kind of thing, like, without it, I haven't seen any developers, anyone who works on World of Warcraft, talking about why these changes were made. But this is the kind of thing that actually does like kind of annoy me, and it makes me angry, because then I feel like it becomes harder and easier for people who want to hand wave away this discussion about respecting marginalized groups of people to, well, there's people that get out there being sexy for money, and I don't like it, and I use it as an excuse. Like, no, like, have sexual content in the content you consume, and be a functioning enough human to realize that it's fantasy and that not every single human being on this earth has been put here for your sexual enjoyment.
Wow, that's a lot, dude.
Yeah, dude, this is like this makes me so angry.
Clearly that was an unload, and I'm happy for your health that you've gotten it off your chest. Oh my goodness.
I've talked a little bit about it on Twitter, but yeah, I really, really get annoyed when people are like, but sexual content exists. Why are we having this discussion about respecting your fellow employees? Like, what?
Okay.
Why are you even linking those two?
There's two things going on. Absolutely. If this is, we're having internal problems because our higher ups are bad people, so we're replacing boobies in your game, that's punishing the players. That's just silly. However, what is more likely happening here, and the real reason why this would happen for a good reason, is that this doesn't match the tone. World of Warcraft is not a sexy place. There is very little sexy about that world. Thrall had children. Where do they come from? We don't know. We're always at war.
We've willed them into existence.
Basically.
Kyle, everybody knows orcs reproduce asexually. They just bud like plants.
And the greatest like romances of World of Warcraft's time are tame. Are so tame that Disney movies are more aggressive in these sort of innuendo. So when you get rid of images of cleavage, what I see is you matching the world you've made. This would be very, very different, for instance, in Final Fantasy, where everyone's always cuddling and petting each other, and everyone's got sexy outfits all the time, and lingerie flows like wine in the streets. But World of Warcraft hasn't made that kind of game. And so when you are questing through, where was this? Ravenholm?
I don't remember.
That's from Half-Life. But when you're questing and you come across a
Ravencrest Manor?
There we go.
Is that it? I don't remember, man.
And when you're playing a for fun card game and Jaina's sporting some cleavage, I can see just on a base level how that could be a disconnect for you. And you kind of go, oh, that might not be appropriate. That's kind of weird. Plus, Hearthstone Mobile and all that, they're trying to maybe grow their audience and all sorts of things. That came out in 2019, well before all this, and it was argued on multiple fronts. But it is an absurd argument to suggest that different platforms, different products should have the same level of boobage for your enjoyment.
Yeah, it's just silly, man. Like it's the kind of thing where when we start having these discussions in the vacuum of like just looking at this art replacement, I just get so flustered. Like you want to update the art, like whatever. Like we joke about the Jaina, we still joke about the Jaina cover up over on the Angry Chicken podcast.
It is silly. It is silly, and plus, it's not that it's a t-shirt. I think it'd be more comfortable, honestly.
Yeah, and I wanted to be clear, like this isn't me going like I need boobies in my video games. What I'm saying is I want society to be able to be like normal human beings when they are exposed to cleavage or more sexualized characters in your fiction, and not hold it up as some excuse that it's okay to objectify women. It just drives me absolutely up a wall. So yeah, there's that. Plus, I mean, let's be honest, Jaina's new costume is way cooler.
What is this one with the shirt? Or are you talking about like
no,
new
No, not that one. I'm talking about the redesign that Jaina got in BFA, where she's wearing like her nautical, like captain's garb. That shit is dope. Oh,
sure.
Yeah. So, anyways, ruffled my feathers here this morning reading that. I was just like, this is absurd. This is the silliest thing. This is the silliest thing I've seen. So, anyways, I'd love to hear if anyone gets wind of the devs or the artists talking about like why they made this change. I would love to read up on it. But anyways, that is gonna bring us to an end of this edition of Nexus Gaming News. At the moment, you can still write in if you want to let us know your thoughts. You can do so at itncast@gmail.com. One of these days we'll get a new inbox made, but it is not this day. You can also tweet at me, Garrett Art, on Twitter, or you can tweet at Kyle at Kyle Ferguson. And of course, if you're watching, listening, or enjoying this, however you get it, please like and subscribe, whether it's YouTube, whether it's on podcast. It helps the show out a ton. But again, that's going to do it for this edition of NGN. And until next time, good luck and have fun.